Welcome everybody to this month's GatherUp webinar. We're excited to have you. We're going to give everybody a minute here to join. We've got a couple of great panelists this month to provide some awesome insight on generative search. So we don't want to keep everybody waiting, but just want to make sure everyone can get in and join us here before we get started. I need to work on some elevator music or something like that. And I also realized my Twitter logo needs to be updated, or X logo or whatever.
No.
Oh man.
Keep the Twitter, man. Keep it going.
Is it pronounced X? Because I know that he does those weird pronunciations of something, but I don't know if we've heard the formal pronunciation of it yet.
I guess I didn't know. I don't get my Musk updates sent to my email. All right, I think we have, all right, we got most people, looks like they're joining. Again, thanks everybody for joining us for this month's GatherUp webinar. This month's topic is preparing for the next era of search and generative AI. We have two great guests that I will get to in a second, but a couple housekeeping things. We will be recording. We will send out the recording and the slides afterwards. And if you have questions, the Q&A should be open, and you can use that. We'll get to questions at the end. There are a lot of questions in this month's webinar. We have a little bit different format, so we're going to try to keep this very conversational, go through some of the topics that people are asking about when it comes to generative search. And so, maybe we'll answer your question as we go, but if we don't, make sure you put them in the Q&A for later on. So without further ado, let's get into our guest speakers. Andrew Shotland is CEO of Local SEO Guide. Many of you probably read his stuff and engage with him on social media. Great resource for everything local SEO. We're very excited to have Andrew join us this month. Thank you, Andrew.
Yes. And just that picture is we're semi rebranding as LSG SEO because no one can ever remember Local SEO Guide as a name. So
LSG SEO. Noted. All right. And Krystal Taing is joining us from Uberall. Krystal, another very experienced person in local search, GPP Platinum product expert. That's a great title. Thank you, Krystal, for joining us.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. I'm Steve Hartman, product marketing manager. Nobody cares about that. GatherUp, if you're new to GatherUp, you're not familiar with who we are, you signed up because you thought this topic was outstanding. Thank you, first of all. And GatherUp is a software service to help businesses gather, engage with, and share customer feedback throughout the buyer journey. So a quick note on GatherUp, and if you're not familiar, hopefully you are. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about a few different aspects of generative search. The three of us were talking beforehand about how much has changed since we met last week already. So just note that a lot of this changes week to week at this point, but we are talking about what's changing and how that can impact businesses, agencies who are offering local SEO, what that means for you. And then some takeaways are going to be around like staying up to date, like how do you kind of get a handle on all of this when it's changing, and maybe who to follow outside of Krystal and Andrew, of course, great resources, but other places to find information related to this. And like I said, at the end we'll have a live Q&A, so stick around for that part. All right, so let's talk about first how this is changing. The term, I mean, there's a few different ways to define this, but this is, I thought, summed it up nicely. What is generative search? And it uses AI to deliver results. Generative meaning it's creating something new, right? So traditional search is pulling information that already exists and giving it to the user, but this is saying, I'm going to take that information and make something new. It's generating a new result, new content that did not exist. So that's what generative search is about. That's what it is. Here's an example. This is from Google's generative AI. So this is a question around like what's better, right? Like more conversational in nature, a query, and it gives you this answer based on that query. So instead of just linking to different things, it's giving you something new to process. You can ask follow-ups and things like that. So that's generative search. If you're not following or haven't been because you're too busy running a business, totally understand. And that's what we're here for. Here's an example of Bing, right? They can create images. So it's not just text-based ideas here. There's a lot of different image creators. This is the Bing one, create an image for me. So it's not just pulling images that exist, it's creating something new. So that's why it's called generative search and generative AI. Marie Haynes recently had a great article. She followed the Google earnings call, and there was a lot of AI talk there. And so, there's Google updated, and the one thing I took away was that AI for Google has been around and they're using it. It's not something that's new really to them, but how it's being used might be. And another one that I noticed was around this multimodal search. So more images, more video, like being able to process information from all different sources and giving results based on that. And so it does seem to be that this is like coming, but I know there's a lot of different mixed reviews, a lot of different takes, even amongst the panelists today about this new future of local search. So that's kind of setting the stage. I know I talked a lot. First question we're going to get into for the two of you: how are consumer search habits changing or evolving? The question kind of comes from like, is this being created to solve a problem that exists, or is this going to create a new way that consumers use search going forward? Andrew, I'll let you kick it off.
So, I don't have a ton of data on how, millions of people are actually using this stuff yet. Although Google, I think yesterday, I think released some data that said like 60% of people prefer or are happy with these SGE results, which I find kind of hard to believe. But I can speak to my own use case, which is there's a lot of, let's just call it task-based searches that AI seems to be really built for. So as an example, we're launching this new website, lsgseo.com. And I've just been like screwing around with the HTML. I'm not a programmer, but I've been using Bing Chat to essentially teach me how to program a page. Like, hey, how do I make these columns do this and that? And it works amazingly well. So I think there's like all sorts of task-based searches that AI can replace.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, and I think we talked about this as well. There's things that I instinctively use SGE for, or use ChatGPT, or use Bard for, and there's definitely things that I avoid using it for. Specifically, I think around like when we're looking for local businesses, I haven't found it incredibly helpful, and kind of compared it to like a recipe website. Like I don't need the history of tacos if I'm just searching for a taco shop. So I think it definitely has some learning to do. And I don't think it's going to necessarily drive change in consumer search habits, but I do think people will lean on it for different reasons. So it'll be interesting to see how it progresses, but it is quite different in the types of searches that it delivers.
Sure. So essentially, unless they all kind of adopt similar, ways to solve queries, you might go to an SGE, for example, for something versus like what would be Google today, like a local search. Maybe are you searching in different spots?
Yeah, no, I see myself using ChatGPT for particular things versus going directly to Google. I am kind of wary because I know that Google has said this is kind of in beta until the end of the year. And I know it's August now, but I just can't see it being at a place by the end of the year to somewhere that I would like to see all my searches land. So I hope there's a lot more changes before it actually takes shape and overtakes the SERP.
Right. All right. Next question. what types of questions can generative AI powered search answer that traditional search cannot? I think this maybe answers the question Jeff just posed around task-based searches as versus business queries. I think that's what you were kind of getting at, Krystal.
Yeah, no, I think, and Andrew has a great example. Like typically, if you go to Google right now, or you go to Bing or wherever you want to search, and you said something like, teach me how to code a web page, or here is, code, and I want to turn this from one column into two, you're going to get a lot of factual articles about coding. You're going to have to sift through them. You're not going to get a couple of steps very quickly that show you how to do this, even if you're a novice coder. That is where I think are really helpful examples. I personally love using it for saying like, hey, here's an email or an article I wrote. Can you change the tone to this? Or can you rewrite it for a non-native English speaker? Like maybe I'm speaking to someone overseas and I want to make sure it's simplified. Those are things that I think, SGE, Bard, ChatGPT do a lot better than traditional search.
Yeah, I think to put it in the local business kind of category, I think there's all sorts of content things that we use for SEO. Calculators come to mind as one of the great ones, which has been for years a classic SEO strategy. If you're a roofer, have a roofing calculator. If you're a mortgage broker, have a mortgage calculator, right? And those get links and people use them and they search for them. And now you can just go to one of these AI things and be like, hey, like, this is what I'm doing. What do I do and what do I need to do? And it'll kind of, instead of me having to enter 500 things into a calculator and hopefully get the right answer, you can now start to refine it. And so I think those kinds of things it will take over. It just seems like it could be a better use case. I had a legal issue yesterday that I was trying to figure out with a client contract, and you can't trust these things for legal, like, because there's that classic case a month ago where the attorney like did some filing using ChatGPT that was totally made up. But it gave me a really good feedback quickly for me to something to think about. So I would kind of look at the type of business you are and go, okay, what are the things that I do now, or the questions I answer on my website or whatever, that this thing can do better? And that's where maybe the opportunity and vulnerability are.
Right. Excellent. Next, one screenshot here we have is like the conversational search, which I think is what we're kind of alluding to, like more, typically you would click an article and you'd have to read through it and figure out your answer, or does this fit what I'm looking for? And with some of these tools, there's more of a conversational element of, like in this example, it's when do I harvest garlic? Well, it depends, right? Like depends. Okay, what about if I'm in zone 5A? And it'll give you an answer. And so you can kind of continue to make this more of a, I got this result, but then I also need to like refine my query. And instead of going back and retyping everything, you can just add it in here. So what are the benefits? I mean, we kind of kind of hit on this already, but the benefits of it, there's.
Can we actually go back to that slide,
yeah,
Steve? Because
sure.
it actually touches on my personal little hot button or like my little like guru button. Like, I think this is where, for local, this is where this thing is trying to go, which essentially is like a virtual IVR experience to get people to either a place to take action, like a purchase, let's say, or schedule an appointment. So the case I always use is my oldest daughter, Tess, loves the color green. For her birthday, I want to get her a green top. And so I'd start like entering like, hey, cool green tops. And it would start to lead me down a path like, oh, you can get this on Amazon, or hey, the store downtown has that in stock. And I think that's where I think that's kind of partially where this stuff is going.
Yeah, I think I've even seen a few queries where when you get the list of potential shopping options, it'll say, plus this store has a sale, or here's a coupon I found. And I think that's a real opportunity for businesses that need to understand the future of SGE and conversational search. That could be potential, competitive advantages, placement options within the search.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that would be a huge win for local businesses, right? If it can you don't have to even market that. They would just know based on, things that are existing in the web today, or videos you've created or something like that, that you had a sale and, hey, come in now. That's cool. Okay, so benefits of generative AI and search. We've kind of touched on it. Maybe summarize a little bit of the benefits that you guys are seeing right now.
I will say one of the things that's interesting, of course, a bit more refinement is needed, but kind of the freshness of the data is quite interesting and could be an interesting opportunity. I think in traditional search results, traditional search, it's, especially for large organizations, it's kind of like you've got your position, so much has to go into moving that position or capturing a new keyword, maintaining your positions. Whereas I think generative AI, the conversational search, the other elements that customers can engage with your business, there's a lot broader opportunity to have placement, but also easier ways to come up more often or change your position. I don't know if it's just because there's so many tests going on right now that you see it, but I do see a lot of changing results and opportunities for businesses to see more impact in AI. So I'm excited about that.
Andrew.
Yeah, I think it's kind of goes to what I already said is there's just all sorts of specific ways to take advantage of it. And, but there's also like a learning curve. That's where I think it's always hard to say, because I've been using Google search for so long that maybe I'm just like so much inertia on that. And so like the cognitive load to kind of figure out how to use this thing is, for idiots like myself might be really hard. Sure. And often it's weird. I never thought I'd say this. I find like the 10 blue links paradigm often a lot more satisfying for results than someone like writing a book about, pizza.
Yeah. I think about that a lot, is like the standard searcher versus like SEOs and digital marketers that are analyzing this. Like I guarantee there's not a lot of just general searchers out there that have even tested SGE. So I'm always eager to see like what is the general public's feedback on the search results versus our very critical analysis of the results.
Totally.
Well, and yeah, even the the trustworthiness of it, right? Like people will probably just take it for what it's worth and not even question it, even though there might, as we've seen, there are some results that aren't always accurate and have some information that's spotty at best. So there's going to be that learning curve as well, which it might improve over time, of course. Okay, so that's kind of like where you guys see it right now and benefits of it, what it means. Let's talk about the impact, especially on local. I think you both have touched on this a little bit, but like this could impact, as you're looking for a business, and Andrew, your example, like I don't need the history. I want to find a business or I want to look for something. So some of the questions that we are going to address, like the first one, will the tactics you've been utilizing still be valuable? Krystal, you talked about like we have all this data. You've worked hard to get that position, doing traditional, like, things that are valued in organic search. But now this newness, like maybe is that still as important, that experience factor, I guess. So how do you think these 4 things in particular are going to be influenced with generative search, and then other parts of organic and local search?
Yeah, I will say broadly, yes, but I've seen a number of instances that like make me question like the amount of detail and how much focus some of these sites are getting. So in general, I've seen Google pull up a lot of content, a lot of images, a lot of videos and text from websites and surface it like very high in the SGE results, which tells you those are the types of things they value. They're still pulling your hours from your businesses. I've seen them pull a review from a GBP profile into a very unrelated local search and say, this is what people are saying about the business, which is quite interesting. But then I've also seen, it's I think kind of referred to as the bear claw, which shows you kind of the 3 organic results that open up more. I've seen very odd sites rank there that rank nowhere in like the top 10 or 20 results of traditional organic. And that's where I start to question some of this type of content and the way Google is mining that data. So I'm on the fence, but I will say generally, knowing everything about Google, that like they still value helpful content. They still want to push businesses and companies in this direction. So I wouldn't abandon these concepts whatsoever. It's just, I think to what we've been saying, you need to monitor how these results are showing and kind of the opportunities to display, but definitely have seen some questionable results.
Yeah, I would assume they're using these as kind of filters. So they get this large language model thing that spits out an output, and then they run it through whatever the algorithmic version of these things are to go, oh, this is crap, or this is great, right? And of course, it doesn't get it right all the time. So I think where it's weird. I think we look at this stuff as, oh, this is just another version of SEO. It's not even that different a version. And so what we're spending our time trying to figure out is like, where do we see the differences between what we would normally do for a SERP and what we would do for this weird thing? And I don't think it's a very good use of most people's time at the moment because it's changing all the time, but more from a curiosity thing. And what we see is, you want to look at the outlier results, meaning, oh, this result doesn't show up in the SERP on page 1, but it shows up number 2 in the SGE result, and try to figure out why is that? What is it about the content that, and this is where this thing can drive you crazy, because the results I don't think are particularly consistent. Like I could put in the same search twice in a row and get totally different results. So, so it's tricky.
Do you think, I mean, granted, this is very new, as we've all pointed out, and it will change a lot, but to me that brings up a concern on the value of it, the trustworthiness of it. Like if every time I run it, it's got different results. Do you think that makes consumers leery, or is that the intended focus of this?
I don't think they would care. Because
Okay.
how many people are doing the same search over and over again?
Just SEOs.
Yeah, that's just
SEO
us.
thing. Yeah, I think it's more like, oh, does it look trustworthy? Is it fast? Did the results seem good? I think that's what consumers care about. And it's funny, I still come back to like, oh, there's something about scrolling and clicking and selecting a page for me that's like, oh, I'm making the choice and now I'm willing to invest in reading that page, versus this machine spitting something up to me that I now have to like look and decide whether or not it's good. I don't know why. It's really not too different than clicking on a search result, but I don't know why it's cognitively for me hard to get over.
Right.
Yeah. And I think too, I've seen in even just the last couple of days, like more links, more options for engagement, because that was one of the challenges originally, is there was almost nowhere to click when you would get a result. It was just like, here's your answer. That's it. Do you want to ask a follow-up question? So I get that, but I think I've seen a couple examples where they're providing more citations and links to sites where users can engage, because I think that was a really big gap.
Always changing. So somebody asked a question about GBP. Will GBP in the local pack diminish in importance with these new generative search results?
It doesn't seem like it. It seems like they're just another local pack, right? If you do any local type search, you get a local pack in the SGE results.
Yeah, SGE for sure. That's the one I've noticed has sort of similar look and feel.
Yeah. But they might have a lot more data. So there might be, in a way, it might be better than the local pack, which just has these 2 or 3 listings with very minimal data. So as an example, I was looking just before, so if they have local inventory, right, it might show that inventory like in that little sidebar thing.
Right.
So I think it's probably a better, assuming the results are good, it's probably a better local pack.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I've only seen instances where the content and information that's been added to GBP and your website is more prominent in the local pack on SGE. I do think, though, the thing that has changed a little bit is the actions. Like, there's not immediately click to driving directions. There's not like click to book a reservation. Like, it takes a couple of additional clicks, which I don't think Google wants to do. So I want to see kind of how that evolves, because the local pack today, there are very clear call to actions for every single business type. There's always like an immediate button to take that. So I think that would be beneficial to see more of that. But other than that, the content information, and even like I mentioned before, the GBP data displaying in non-local searches is quite interesting too. So I don't think there's any diminishing in importance. It'll just evolve, I think, with SGE.
Yeah, as you were kind of giving that answer, Krystal, I think of Q&A. And is that one of the elements of GBP maybe that, I don't know if it goes away, but like with SGE, you could kind of ask the questions and it might be able to answer those for you, and you wouldn't have to have the Q&A, or maybe the business would still want to answer, but maybe it would have a result for you already just based on what it can find.
Yeah, I think lately, over like the last 6 months or so, Google's really been pushing Q&A on GBP, like everywhere on maps. It's like, don't see the answer to your question, ask it with a big, blue button. And it's been, I've seen it move in position a couple of times as well, which it's completely an assumption, but I think Google will leverage it more in this type of conversational style search. I haven't seen it yet, but there has to be a reason why they were putting a lot of emphasis on Q&A, which is a fairly underutilized feature in GBP. I wouldn't be surprised if it rears its head a little bit more in SGE.
Yeah, I know it was down, I think, or there was something going on last week with Q&A as well, and it did come back. But
yeah, which if history tells me anything, that means something, the engineers at Google are doing something with that part of the product. So yeah, again, wouldn't be surprised.
Right. All right. So along the lines we've talked about, some of the impacts to the local pack, but like just in general content creation, and not even so much about AI created content for your websites, but just in general, the tactics we currently are doing when it comes to content for our website and content around the web. Does that change with generative search, or have you seen anything that indicates maybe some different tactics should be in place going forward?
The kind of what I talked about previously is you want to look for kind of outliers that can give you hints as to why it's there, because that generally is like a peek at the algorithm. And so if something is on page 10 of the SERPs, but is number 2 in an SGE result, you then want to look at that content and go like, what is it about that page that would make the model like think this is important or valuable? And I don't want to go into like, here's exactly how it works, because I don't actually know. I just have a general idea. But basically it's looking at the connections between words across like a billion or trillion words. And so so you want to kind of, what our theory is like, oh, you want to look for really niche queries where there's just not a billion versions of that concept on the web. And then you can start to pick apart what, like, if there's only 10 pages on the web that talk about a certain topic, you can kind of try to figure out like, what is it about those 10 pages that cause them to show up in the SGE, if that makes any sense. So I think it's ultimately it'll be for those of you who like are creating content for SEO and using these tools that are like, hey, we looked at the top 100 URLs that rank for this query and they all use the word like blue. It's going to be another version of that. Like, okay, what's common about these results in SGE that we can kind of emulate?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's been interesting to see the type of content that SGE pulls out of pages and then also displays. It's a lot deeper than what you see today in like the featured snippets that will display on search. And I think I will typically default and say, like, it looks like a Wikipedia article, but it's usually not. It's usually like a random blog or a website that is not as readily known. And I do think a lot of it has to do with the type of content, the level of detailed content, and how unique that content is on the page. But I do believe everything Google's been preaching about helpful content and content written for humans is going to be weighted quite greatly in SGE results.
So continue to create content for humans that helps solve the problem or get them to an answer or whatever. So
yes,
in
expert
that respect,
content and yes.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. We want to show a couple examples of like the differences between, because we've kind of talked about like the traditional local pack versus SGE and BARD and things like this. So just wanted to show a few of these. These actually came from a Bright Local case study that was done. So credit where credit's due here. But what you see here is a few different things. And Andrew and Krystal, if you want to feel free to chime in. But one thing I notice is this query is around best pizza restaurant. So traditional Google search, it's going to show you reviews. It pulls out snippets from reviews that say like probably the best pizza in town or not the best pizza I ate. And then the organic links all mention best. So like best is very obvious to Google right now on what they think best means. However, when you get into these other generative search queries, this one from Bard's serves the first result was popular chain that serves up authentic pizzas. I don't know if that means best or not, but that's how they're interpreting it on Bard. And then the next one is creative and delicious pizzas. And I think the author, and I apologize, I forget her name, who wrote this case study, was even saying like some of these places aren't even in the town that we're searching. So it still has a way to go.
Oh, here's a little thing I picked up yesterday I didn't realize was a thing. Apparently the color that they use in this background is trying to emulate the color of the websites that it's getting the data from. I don't know why that's important, but if you're wondering why it changes colors all the time, I think that's one of the reasons.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was always trying to pick it up. I'm like, why is it orange sometimes and green? And I think they're maybe just trying to draw attention as well, because a lot of the feedback sometimes about the SERP is it's clustered. I can't tell the difference between an ad or a product or that. So that's an interesting insight.
Yeah. Here's SGE, and I think you guys talked about this, but like more in line with a typical local search, right? Like you get the map, you get review data, images from, I'm assuming GBP images on the left side. They have the articles on the top right, which is different than a typical local pack, right?
One thing I do want to call out here that is also very different about this search result versus a traditional local search result is specifically for food-based queries. Typically what you're going to see is if you search the name of a food item, so in this case, pizza, Google will dynamically change that main image to match whatever that is you searched. So it will change it to a slice of pizza, a pizza pie, and I notice it's not doing that here. So another interesting thing that's, I think, different in SGE versus local.
Yeah, you're talking on the left side here.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, from a user standpoint, I like the bottom piece, right? Like this is probably similar to the other questions or people also ask type of thing. So it's got a few options there, which I'm sure they'll refine as they go. And then Bing, and I think this one was another one that I found interesting. I think this was the one that had a couple places that weren't even in the same town as the query here in Brighton. But again, best pizza, the only thing that really shows that it's best is this kind of, the best dough or whatever, until you get to the bottom and it says you can also check out this list of pizza places. But like, to me, this one isn't, this result isn't as useful, and I find it a little bit cluttered, but I don't know if you guys have thoughts on the Bing chat result.
Yeah, I would assume like this is not something I would traditionally use in Bing chat. Like this wouldn't be a type of result I would be interested in getting. Which again, I think tells you the different sources that you would use based on, your need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't go to ChatGPT and ask for local pizza places either. Right.
Yeah.
So there's just some of these tools. So SGE, it looks like as far as local goes, is probably right now the clear, like giving me the results that I probably want if I'm looking for something local. Okay, so one of the last things I want to hit on, because GatherUp is a pretty big advocate for reviews and review generation and feedback. But it's this idea around like the traditional ranking factors. So when we think about ranking factors, proximity and, your GBP and categories and things like that, but, things, reviews, things, those are the things that typically will impact your ranking in the local pack. So when we look at this list from Local SEO Guide or LSG SEO, how will some of these traditional ranking factors be impacted moving forward with generative search?
I actually think reviews could become even more important. I know it's self-serving for you guys, but I think as I think about it, it's because reviews is like words and ideas, right? And if people are now searching in like a billion different ways for the best reviewed HVAC guy, my guess is Google is going to want to use the topics in words in those reviews a lot more in SGE than it might, let's say, for a best pizza place near me or best HVAC guy near me.
Yeah. No, I would completely agree. Again, you think of SGE being more conversational, ranking content that is more conversational, like review content is a prime example of that type of content that they're interested in displaying, interested in mining and leveraging. And we know Google loves UGC a lot more than brand provided data. So I definitely think reviews will potentially have even higher of an impact, content in general. And I've seen so much of photos and videos. I think that's definitely going to probably increase in importance. Right now, I think there's particular industries where they're more heavily weighted. And I think it'll probably start to even out. So it doesn't matter if you're not a restaurant, you might be a doctor's office and someone wants to see a tip or, some type of YouTube short. Those types of companies that are investing in that type of content, I think will fare well in SGE.
But I'll give you actually a real world experience that happened to me this weekend. I was in the market for a flexible hose, and I went to maybe Bard or Bing, and I was like, best flexible hose, and it gave me a list of results, and one of them, the top one, was like 4.5 5-star reviews. And I went over, probably Home Depot, I think it was on, and the first thing I read was how much this thing sucked. And it did have 4.5 reviews, but it had 4.5 stars, let's say, but it also had pros and cons, and the cons were so apparently like, ooh, this is not a good product, that SGE clearly hadn't gotten that nuance yet.
Interesting. So how about category? Because I see a lot of things about how, hey, we updated this category and look at the change, right? And that seems to have a big impact. But will like SGE and these other generative search tools, will they kind of know the category just inherently? Like, does updating your category, do you think that's going to really make a big difference in the future?
Yeah, the first rule of search engine optimization is spoon feed the search engines, meaning try to leave as little ambiguity as possible so that they know you're a plumber, right? So I would assume, having the right category or changing your category could have an effect.
Yeah. I would say most of the things that I think are ranking factors today will continue to be ranking factors. I think there might be a little shift in, maybe some a little bit more, some a little bit less. But yeah, I think the basics are going to remain the same. Like Google needs that information, Bing needs that information to even consider you. It's going to be those super long queries where they have to weigh a lot of different factors, or the really competitive queries where I think you'll need to do more. But I wouldn't see any of kind of the core features diminishing in SGE as it stands today.
I think that's probably welcome news for everybody listening and SEOs around the world. So that's good. A couple things. I know we've got some questions coming in. Keep them coming. We'll get to them here in a minute. But we did want to provide a few, I guess, outlets, ways you can kind of stay updated, because as we've talked about, this is constantly changing week by week, day by day. So like people to follow, places to get information. So we wanted to provide a few of those. I think we kind of hit on this, and I hope that was an intentional, maybe not so intentional segue of just like continue doing what you're currently doing. Content matters, right for the users and the consumers. Update GBP, make sure your information's accurate, updated. Anything else that we should let people know about as far as like what they can do today to sort of prepare or get ready for these changes that take some time?
I wouldn't say there's much to prepare for because so much is changing. So like, don't feel like you're out of the loop. But I like using SGE for everyday tasks as well as like work tasks. So as much as you can understand how it works, even if the answers and outputs continue to change, I think that's really valuable. So whether it's just doing your weekend shopping, like, looking for a recipe, maybe this is helping to code a website, or I've even used it to summarize books that maybe I didn't want to read and I just want to share some insights about those. Like just understanding how to leverage it in your day-to-day will also give you an idea on how to better prepare businesses for it, how they need to be discoverable in SGE whenever it does roll out.
Yeah, I think right now it's the benefit is much less on the, let's say, how to get customers side of things, and more on how you can figure out how to use these tools for your business in some other way. Like someone on the Q&A was asking, how do I use this to get information on my Google ad campaign? I'm like, oh yeah, you just upload your data and start querying it in all sorts of weird ways and say like, what's the best ad? Right. That's how I would start to use it for a local business.
Right. All right. Couple resources we wanted to share with everybody. And you guys can feel, I got local U in there twice. They must be really important. So localu.org, they have great events, webinars. I think both of you have been a part of that in the past. So they have an event coming up in October that people can attend in the Toronto area. Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal have great content, regular writers, contributors that are talking about this. Near Media, former, co-founder of GatherUp, Mike Blumenthal is part of Near Media, so they are constantly updating information around it. And then a couple others that I found and I have been following is like theverge.com, tech publication. They have some information on there, and then iPullRank. If you're not familiar with iPullRank, they do a lot of podcasting and webinars and content around search and local search. So any others that you guys highly recommend as far as just resources, publications, media outlets covering this?
I think those are more than enough. Like just go on Twitter. I think you have in your next slide, like here's some people who they do nothing but tweet about SGE all day long. Like follow those people, let them do all the legwork for you. I think most in our experience as consultants, most people need to be conversant in this because someone's going to ask a question like, why can't we do this all with AI? Like, which we get like every 5 seconds. So basically you need to be able to have a cocktail party conversation about it. But in terms of SGE being something you should be spending more than like 1% of your brain on, like, I don't think so at the moment.
Right. So outside of Krystal and Andrew, here are some other people. There's plenty more. I mean, there's lots of great, the SEO community on Twitter is outstanding, LinkedIn as well, but like Twitter is just, I talk to my coworkers all the time. Like there's like people who literally just talk about this all the time and it's amazing. So a few of them here, Marie actually she's the one that had the article around the Google earnings call and a lot of updates on SGE directly from Google there. So special shout out to her. And then Lily Ray I love her Twitter feed because I feel like she loves to just pick apart SGE and stuff. So I always get a kick out of that, but a lot of good insight from all these people and many more. So all right, so I want to get questions. We got 15 minutes left. That's perfect. We are on schedule. So just a couple takeaways. I think hopefully everyone kind of got this from the conversation today, but there's been a lot of adaptation by SEOs throughout the years, different algorithm updates. And this is kind of that next iteration of that, where the things that are important today are still important. And we continue to need to, do the things that you're currently doing, but how this stuff might surface in the future could be a little bit different. But as far as today, you don't need to know everything. Andrew, you put a great cocktail, be able to have a conversation at a cocktail party about it. But there's a lot of resources out there. So if you are doing a million things in your role and you don't have time to just follow SGE and the changes in generative search, just follow these people and Krystal and Andrew, and they'll steer you in the right direction as we follow this journey. So let's see, we have Q&A. So I know, Andrew, you did a few answers in here, but I wanted to surface these because I thought they were, there's others who might want to hear. So this person asks, I work for a property management company that owns several rental properties around the city. How could a real estate company take advantage of this new technology, which I guess is SGE or generative search?
Awesome. I love Andrew's comment here about honing in on best neighborhoods, how to negotiate that kind of stuff from like an SEO content strategy. I don't know how this property management company works, but one of the things could potentially using it to look into areas of opportunity. So if you're trying to get into a new neighborhood, a new area, I think leveraging SGE, Bard, ChatGPT, what are the neighborhoods in this state that have the smallest volume of property rental companies, but the highest, volume of renters, like stacked ranking it that way could be quite interesting. There's, essentially endless ways to kind of leverage it. And then you can turn those into charts. You can ask it to turn it into charts, gather information on reaching out to these companies, that kind of thing. So that would be interesting.
Yeah, I think the thing that at least what we've been using it for, but it's just like this way to get through data, right? You have all this information, and and that's where the leveraging of AI just in general, not necessarily search results related, but that's the biggest advantage that I've seen for most businesses. It's just understanding data that you have and giving you some idea of what you're doing. For us, it's what you're doing well, where you need improvement. What does our total review volume look like in terms of 5 things we're doing, positively. So I'm sure that doesn't change across industries, right? Like using it to solve problems.
Yeah, just a note of caution whenever you're getting data out of it, triple check it because it may lie to you.
Yes.
Right.
Quadruple.
Yeah. Right. How does it help for technical searches related to Google Ads or analyzing data? So you kind of mentioned this, Andrew, in your response, but for the maybe expand on that. So as far as technical searches in Google Ads.
Well, I wasn't really sure what the questioner meant by technical searches. I'm assuming it's how to improve my ad campaign or something, which I would actually think they've got some version of this in Google Ads already where you can query it for insights. I know in analytics it has that as well. Not very good, but you can do it. So I would just be querying it for insights. And then I think maybe someone follow them and say, no, how does it affect Google Ads? And I really wasn't meaning are ads going to show up here? And I think absolutely ads will show up here. I think they already have been testing it. So it'd be just another place to, kind of try to pay for customers.
Yeah. And I think this is a great example of just try it out. what is a question you're trying to answer, or what is the answer you're trying to get to, and just start typing it in SGE or Bard or ChatGPT and see what the outputs are. And even say, like, if I provided this data and I wanted to derive this information from it, what would your recommendations be? So that's a great opportunity to start testing. But as Andrew mentioned, like, if you're asking it for data, be very cautious.
But you could even do things like, hey, which copy will convert better on my ad, right? And it might have somehow have like read 10 million studies and said, oh, it's this copy, right?
Yeah. All right. That's, I don't know. I don't have any more questions that have come in. Anything you guys want to finish with or summarize with generative search and this topic in general? Leave something to leave our audience with.
I just think you have to, again, be conversant. And if you're conversant, you'll automatically be the smartest person in the room, which of course is everyone's goal, right? So, so just be conversant, but don't feel like you have to drop everything and solve SGE.
Yeah. Like I said, it's interesting to see it and see it change every day. But just get comfortable. Yeah. Comfortable using it, comfortable seeing it. I'll say I spent 2 weeks in Europe just recently and I didn't have SGE. So also be, kind of grateful if you're, in the US that you have access to it, because there's actually a lot of people that have never been able to play with it. So it's definitely a benefit to have here.
That's a great point. If people want to start using these tools, can anybody use them? I think there's wait lists, there's things like that. Like you got to sign up. Any tips for people, or is there no,
you can't, if you have a Google workplace email address, you can't use it for some weird reason. You have to have a Gmail.
Yeah. And it's not available in all countries. I think there's a number of countries that it's available in. It's not available in Europe. I don't even think it's available in Canada. I think Darren Shaw was saying he was very bummed that he's not able to test it. So again, also a benefit to have here. There's also additional languages. So if you want to test it in additional languages, it's good.
And I would say Bard right now is very limited in what you can get out of it. Bing Chat is much more powerful in a lot of ways to do these like task-based things and things like that. Cool. Hey Steve, can we go? Yeah, I want to do my shameless.
You bet. I wanted to make sure you had time to plug this.
Hi, shameless plug here. So for all of you people who actually like to dabble in SEO, we've built a free tool called squirrel.ai. AI has nothing to do with AI. AI is for actionable insights. It works inside of Slack. And the reason why it's cool is you can get instant alerts on when your Google business profiles get updated. You can do Google business posts to multiple locations at the same time. And there's like 10 other SEO tools in there. So if you're interested right now, it's in alpha. We're just looking for people to test it and give feedback. It's kind of fun if you're into Slack and kind of weird SEO stuff. So please go sign up and we'll sign you up. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll link to that in our follow-up email too, when we send out the recording and the slides for today's webinar. This was super fun. Thank you guys both for joining. Andrew Shotland from LSG SEO. Did I say that right?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yes, I did. Yes. We're all still getting used to the name change. And Krystal Taing from Uberall. Thank you guys so much. And thank you all for joining, and we'll follow up and we'll see you next month.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
All right. Thanks.